Hi Dan, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Alistair?
I'm doing really well, and we're going to be doing a really interesting video today. Can you just explain what we're going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about the most common, most costly mistakes that you can make when you put your vehicle up on Bring a Trailer. We're going to talk about how you should prepare your car. We'll talk about videos and photos. We'll also talk about how you need to prepare yourself because you need to have knowledge of the vehicle and how Bring a Trailer works. We'll go through what research you should be doing in advance and how to manage your emotions during your Bring a Trailer auction. And when you get all of this right, this is what maximizes the price that you're going to get for your car.
So we're just going to briefly run through what Bring a Trailer is, and obviously a lot of people use it for selling their classic car. And because you've been using it yourself as an established dealer for many years, you've been using it,
Yeah.
and you know lots of other people that have used it, and you're very familiar with a lot of the mistakes people make. And
Yeah.
some of these mistakes are quite common and can be very, very expensive if
Yeah.
you make them. In case someone listening to this video isn't quite sure what Bring a Trailer is, just quickly summarize in a couple of sentences what Bring a Trailer is.
It's I guess the simplest explanation, it's a website where you can buy or sell a sports car or classic car of some sort. Probably something between 5 to 10% of the market, I think, trades on Bring a Trailer. So it doesn't 5% or 10% may not sound great, but it is actually a huge chunk of the market to be located in one place. And it's probably, in fact, not probably, it's definitely the most active marketplace when it comes to sports cars and classic cars of various sorts. And so you can sign up, you can put your vehicle up there for sale. And as we're going to discuss, there are a lot of problems that are not obvious when you first go in. But once you put up one or two cars, you start to discover, oh, this is actually a thing that requires some experience to get it right.
Yeah.
And that can be the challenge for first timers is to figure out how to do it and how not to, not to step on a landmine.
Yeah, so hopefully, people who are listening to this video who are thinking of using Bring a Trailer, we're going to help them. Obviously, there are so many mistakes people can make, but there are some big common ones, and those are
Yep.
the ones we're really going to focus on. Now, just if someone hasn't used Bring a Trailer before, I think it's wise to sort of say to them, yeah, if you want to use Bring a Trailer, there is a registration process you have
Yep.
to go through, and you have to put your credit card details there, whether you're buying or selling.
Hmm.
So that's all fairly intuitive if you log on, but you have to go through that process and do that.
Yep.
And obviously, a lot of established dealers like yourself also use Bring a Trailer for buying and selling.
Sure. Yeah.
And a number of you also sell. You've sold lots of cars and helped other people sell cars on Bring a Trailer. What would you say is if we start with you've gone through the registration process? I guess the next thing is around the detailing and what are the things that come up there when first registering your car, the description and going through that process. Where are the things that people need to look out for there?
Really, the entire process comes down to attention to detail, right? So if you have, so you've got this nice car that you're going to sell on Bring a Trailer. You need to have it detailed. Really, you need to have it detailed professionally, including the undercarriage. A professional detailer will go through, detail everything, condition the leather, and make sure that the dash is conditioned correctly. Everything gets vacuumed and cleaned. And undercarriage, we have dry ice machine, so we can dry ice the undercarriage, which removes all grime, oil, dirt, and back down just to the natural original surface. So it looks, in most cases, it looks absolutely brand new. And so what happens is the car, if you have a good car, you want it to be so well detailed that it really sparkles. And so what happens is a bad car, when you detail a bad car and you take great photographs of it, people can see, this isn't a great car. But if you have a really good one and you present it correctly, people can see as they scroll through the photos, they can see that's a good car. That looks like a really good car. So that's kind of the foundational thing of it is you really need to present your car correctly. You'll see the successful auctions will have sometimes in excess of 300 photos. And what you're looking to do, like if you put it up and you had 60 photos, you're going to get a lot of questions of people saying, "Could you take a photo of this, please? Could you take a photo of that? I need to see some shots of the VIN tag number." And you'll get a bunch of questions asking for more photos. If you put up like this barrage of detailed photos showing everything and pointing out the little chips, and there is like chip in the paint here, and there's a little thing going on with the stitching here, and you point all that stuff out, what happens is that you don't get barraged with so many questions, and people get a sense that the car is what it is, either a good car or a mediocre. So if you've got a good car, detail it very, very, very well. Detail the undercarriage and put up, I would say, 300 photos at a minimum.
Yeah, and obviously with the photos, you obviously have professional photographers when
Yeah,
people use you.
yeah.
What tips would you have about the photos apart from obviously taking a lot? What are the other mistakes made around photographs?
Yeah. So this would, if we step up to a slightly higher level, the categories that you'll see people making the mistakes is either being non-attentive, they're either unprepared or inattentive to the auction. And unprepared simply means they've taken 40, 60 photos, the car's not well detailed, the photos of what the punters are looking for are not included in there. So being prepared, we often think it's that thing where we don't know what we don't know, right? So I think if you're doing this for the first time, you've got to start figuring out what you don't know. And the way to do that is to go on Bring a Trailer, look at the make and model that you're selling, that you're thinking of selling, and look at a good 10 or 20 auctions and read all of the comments, right? So there's an investment in time. And what you'll discover is that there's a series of questions that will start coming up, right? There'll be people who'll be looking for paint gauge readings on the car. They want to see paint gauge readings all the way around. There'll be people, many of these cars have VIN tags on all of the body panels, right? So the VIN tag of the car should match the VIN tags on all the body panels. So many of the cars we handle have up to 12 VIN tags. So we'll put a photo of each VIN tag, right? And so as you go through and read the questions, and you go through and read, 10 or 20 other vehicles the same as yours, you'll start to get an indication of the questions that you're going to get.
Yeah, and that will give you a good guide as to what you put in the information and what sort of
Exactly.
photos you need to put in as well.
Yeah, you need to be proactive, and because here's the thing, if you get your auction going, right, the first day is normally an easy day, but you got 10 days, right? And if it starts going in the wrong direction, the punters and the trolls they can be vicious. They can be vicious because what happens is they're trying to see if you're hiding something. So they'll
Yeah.
start poking at you to see, is he just ignorant or is he actually trying to actively hide something from us, right?
Yeah, and I think that brings us on to another mistake that I think you've mentioned before, which is where people, when they're selling the car themselves, when they're not using a dealer, the mistake they can make is to get emotionally involved,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that can be a disaster for the price they get and the bids they get.
Well, you get that. Yeah, you get that where and we find that a lot, and it's just human nature, right? So someone, let's say that you have made a mistake and you didn't take photos of something that was important, and now you've discovered. So the trolls on Bring a Trailer serve a useful purpose, right? Because as I said, they're trying to determine whether you're ignorant of what it is you should be showing, or whether you're actively trying to hide a problem, right? And so they will poke at you, as I said, they'll poke at you to try and figure out which it is. And what happens is it can become offensive. And it's so common that you end up going, my God, and these guys are anonymous, right? And you're like, if I knew who that was, I'd give them a piece of my mind, you know. And you do, you kind of, I feel this thing, you feel it coming up. And so what is common in the industry is once something comes up, if it's starting to go sideways, we will vet our responses. So somebody's poked at me,
Mm.
and I can feel it. I'm not in an emotional state where I'm going to make perhaps the greatest response. I will write out my response and text it to a friend who also puts a lot of cars on Bring a Trailer, and ask him, could you read this? Tell me whether I'm pouring gasoline on the fire or whether I'm actually resolving an issue.
Yeah, yeah.
And they'll caution me one way, you know, and we'll do this for each other. We'll do this for each other to make sure that we're not getting, it's a thing where you got to make sure you don't get emotional over this.
Yeah.
It's just people trying to figure out how good is this car
Yeah,
really?
it's like when they say in business, if you've got an email you've got to send to a business
Yeah.
associate, it's really emotionally, where you feel really emotionally charged, that you
Mm.
should write the email and not send it and sleep on it for the night, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
remember Lincoln used to do that on his, I think on his, after his death, they found a drawer filled of letters that he'd never sent.
oh,
And
right, yeah,
it was letters to people that he had huge disagreements with, and he'd written, you know, things that he would never say in a
yeah.
letter that was never going to send to them, and he put the letter away.
And I think this is very relevant because from what you've told me before, people who have got into this emotional charge have actually done so at great cost to themselves,
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
frightened off bidders, and they've got less for their car as a result.
yeah. Now, if I can quantify this, right? I saw a good BMW Z8 that went up for auction. I think it was just recently. Normally, that car would have bought 140 to 150. So it would have sold in the 140 somewhere. It sold for 168, right? It was by an experienced seller. It was very well presented. Any issues with the car that they could solve were resolved. Any little paint chips or any other little things that were going on, they pointed out. And the auction was really well managed. And that car was consigned, and the seller, it 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 got 20 grand more than it typically would have. And it was, I mean, that's a huge amount of money. And it was just through good management and good presentation. It was a good car. Now, and the car had mileage. It wasn't a low mileage. It wasn't like a cream puff. It's just that it was very, very well done. And actually, that car went up for no reserve.
Yeah,
And so you get this thing where if you're not prepared, you're not proactive, and you're not presenting the car correctly, and you get emotional in amongst the auction,
yeah,
what happens is the bad stuff snowballs and it just becomes a freaking disaster. I mean,
yeah,
it can get bad. And the opposite occurs where if you're presenting it correctly, showing the flaws in the vehicle, lots and lots of photos, it's a well-managed auction, and you don't get emotionally charged if they start questioning you, and especially if it's no reserve, the price differential can become quite dramatic. Let's have a look at what happens when things go right. We've handled a reasonably large number of BMW Z8s, and the majority of them are silver with a black interior. You can see this one here is silver with red, but the majority are silver black, right? There goes one silver black, silver black, silver black. And out of the 5,000, however many it was, I think like 3,000, 3/5, 60% of the production was silver black. So most common combination. But when you look at them, you'll see, here goes one. They don't mention the mileage on it. It bought 147. Let's see how many miles. 37,000 miles, right? Bought $147,000. Silver black. 13,000 miles, it was bid to 158, right? So that one got to 147, that got to 158, 13,000 mile car. Here's one that surprised, right? Got to 168,000. Now note, no reserve, It's a no reserve auction. It is silver black, same as the other ones. Well photographed. That's the golden hour, right? Just before dusk or just after dawn. Beautiful. Have a look at this. 60,000 miles. It has, what, 4 times the mileage of that 13,000 mile car, and it's sold for $10,000 more. Nicely photographed. Right, standard interior. Engine doesn't have anything special going on. There's a competition package you could get. This does not have it. You can tell from the photos. Look at the undercarriage, well detailed. Really, really well cleaned. You can see it appears to be in pristine condition. It's got a string of videos, driving videos, walk around video. All right, so there's 4 videos here. And then we've just got a ton of photos, 321 photos. So photographed everything. So well detailed, well photographed, no reserve, hundreds of photos, and look what happens. Look at the bids. Right? Everybody knows it's going to sell. It's a no reserve. As they get into this final run on the auction, 6 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, it's just under 100,000, and you've got a string of bidders who are smacking each other to try and get this car. And it runs all the way up to 168,000, right? 60,000 miles, 13,000 mile car went for 158, $10,000 less, and it had 1/5 of the mileage. Let's look at this one. First of all, it's a reserve auction, so nobody's convinced that it's necessarily going to sell. So, guys aren't eating their lunch in front of the computer just in case they decide to place a bid. They're like, it'll probably go for a lot of money, so I won't bother. Kind of photos are okay, right? Photo of the engine compartment ain't that great. Undercarriage, right, you can see dirt. It's just not as crisp. It doesn't look as clean. Even though it has 1/5 of the mileage, it just doesn't, it's not presented as well. They didn't change out the top, even though the rear window is, it's just unfortunate it didn't. And when we look at the bidding, a no reserve auction, you get this, right? There's some bids, but in the final stretch here of the last day, right, you got one bid, you got another bid, a couple more, right? And it didn't meet reserve. There's no string of people sitting here waiting to see what's going to happen. So this is the combination. This is the combination that works. A good car, well detailed, well presented, no reserve, and then you got to cross your fingers and hope that things unfold. But this was a good car, well presented, obviously a well-managed auction. There were multiple people interested, and they just fought each other. Congratulations to the seller.
It compounds one way or the other.
It compounds either it compounds poorly or it compounds to the upside. Yeah. It's really
so there's a few other interesting things that we've talked about before, which I know make a massive difference. So one of them is having a high quality video. I know you've told me that you've had cars where you believe having a great video, and we'll as we're talking now, we'll show some clips of the kinds of videos we're talking about. And if people can watch the video we're playing now, they can see these kind of videos you believe can make a massive, or you've seen them make a massive difference to more people. If it's well detailed and there's a video, that can really engage people in a way that still photos can't.
Yeah, there's an example that comes to mind for me, and there's probably 2 videos you need. You need a cold start video, right? You'll see those when you go there. So a cold start video, sometimes what happens, Ferraris can be especially, in my experience, Ferraris can do this a lot. When you start the car, there can be a puff of smoke comes out the back. And so people want to see, and sometimes that indicates valve stem seals or issues with the rings or something like that. So they'll want to see a video of the vehicle starting from a dead cold. So there's that, and then then there's a driving video. And one of the vehicle, we have a great videographer. I mean, his videos, Tom Nisco, his
Mm.
video is fantastic. So we did one a while back and this was an interesting car, 54 Corvette. And we're not knowing, we ended up with the car in trade. We don't handle Corvettes normally. And the guy who bought the car was buying it so that he and his wife could enjoy it on the weekends and go for a drive. And when you look at the video is of my wife and myself coming out of a diner, jumping in the Corvette and driving through the countryside. And it just, and I think probably the key thing with the video, not only is the quality and the videography important, the context of it is that the video is of what people would want to do in this car because you're trying to grab them emotionally, right? So
Yeah,
if
you're not just selling a car, you're selling the what the car represents.
yeah, like if you've got a Porsche, a Porsche road racer, right? So some video where the guy's, and he's changing gears and revving it up and round, sliding it around corners and that kind of, if that's kind of the thing you do with the car, then you may want the video to be in that direction.
Yeah, and I think from just experience of being involved in so many different cars being sold that these videos can make a massive
Yeah,
difference.
yeah,
They
yeah, they
really
do.
can.
They can tip people because
Yeah,
you want to get the buyers a little bit emotional, right?
yeah,
Is what you want. Like so the auction part of it gets people bidding against each other, and you want them to have looked at a video where they can see themselves. Yeah,
in the
that's kind of
in
what
the
I would
car.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
can associate with it more.
And
Yeah,
that 54 Corvette, because we didn't know Corvettes very well, and this is the other way you can go. We found a certified Corvette judge from the Corvette Club, and he specialized just in that narrow range of cars. And we paid him some money, and he came and visited, and he went over the car with me, right? And the car was fantastic. I mean, the car looked beautiful. It was a fresh restoration. I loved it, but I didn't know. I didn't know if it was restored correctly. I didn't know if it was numbers matching, if the date codes were correct. And Corvette guys can be they can be picky. They want to know all this stuff. And he pointed out all of the date codes. He pointed out the numbers. He pointed out the things that Corvette guys would want us to show them. And so when we presented that car, we had detailed photos of the car and detailed photos of all the things that were important to Corvette people. And that car sold for what was a record price at that time.
yeah.
And it was only because we did the legwork and we were prepared.
And I guess the other thing, like we're talking about landmines here. If someone's using Bring a Trailer for the first time, or if they maybe only used it maybe once before to sell a car, people are going to look a lot harder at what they're saying because obviously they different to say a dealer like yourself who's been around for 30 years, who's sold cars before on Bring a Trailer. It's very different, so they've got to be extra mindful. That's why what we're saying, this video is really important. These kind of mistakes, and
just to dig into that, just to go one level deeper, when the buyers see that it's a fresh account, because it tells them when the account was opened. So if they see that the account was opened 2 months ago and this is the first car that this person's putting up, they don't have a track record that they can look back at, which is what you're talking about. And so I don't know. And dealers who have been in the business and been selling regularly, they can't fake it, right?
Yeah.
We have to be, because our livelihood depends on it, we cannot fake it, because if we tried to slip one past them, a car had a replaced front fender and we didn't disclose it, the reputation can be damaged really, really easily. Like you can damage your reputation on one deal and you could have had dozens of deals where you were put to. So we cannot wander off the path in any way, shape, or form.
So there's a high level of trust.
There's a high level of trust.
So
And
that's something you've got to be very wary of if you're first time.
Yeah.
no, that's but the reason we're doing this video is to help people who are thinking of using Bring a Trailer by themselves.
Yeah,
I guess I know because obviously you don't just use Bring a Trailer, you have other outlets and you have a
sure.
list, you have a registered list of people who are looking for cars. So there's all
Yeah,
kinds of scenarios where you hear about a car and you don't need to go to Bring a Trailer, but there are some cases I know you where you wouldn't use Bring a Trailer, and I know one of them you mentioned to me was where this you can't control what a lot of people aren't aware of in Bring a Trailer is you can't control some of the narrative you can put about the car.
yeah, yeah.
Could like if it belonged to a celebrity or
Yeah,
something, explain a
yeah,
bit about that.
they so what happens is that they write your description, right? And so they'll write the description the way they want to write it. I mean, we had one car that was owned, a Ferrari that was owned by Cher, from the Sonny and Cher days, and we didn't put that one up there, but you can get things where it was owned by somebody famous. You might have an affidavit that states that this person bought it from. You might even have a photo of them standing next to the car, but maybe you don't have their name on the title, right? And you might have some evidence of it, but it might not be enough for Bring a Trailer. And sometimes they'll write things like we had a low mileage car and they wouldn't put it in the title, right? That it was a low mileage one owner car. And they write it in the way that they want to write it for whatever reason. And a lot of it, I'm sure they get coached by their legal department as
Yeah.
they don't. So sometimes you will have, there will be some cars that we go, you know what? I don't think Bring a Trailer is
Yeah,
the
so
right.
if you've got something unusual about your car, you're quite often restricted by Bring a Trailer, and that one unusual thing. I mean, I've heard cases where because it was owned by a certain celebrity, it's doubled the price of the car.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah, yeah. Bob
know,
Seger's Ferrari Dino went up and it bought like 100 grand more than what kind of I would have expected, 50 to 100 more than it should have. And it
yeah,
was Bob Seger, the singer. I don't know. Maybe there was it must have been a Bob Seger
yeah.
fan that put it, you
That
know?
so there are those, or if the car was in a particular race or a particular event or a film, or you know, I think those kind of things can add a huge amount of
Well,
value to cars.
I
And
mean, the other thing too, the other reason that you might not is if like we have a car coming in that'll and we're not going to put it on Bring a Trailer because it's it's the prototype of this range,
mm,
and there's probably one buyer out there for it who'll pay what our client wants, one buyer.
mm,
If we put it up, and this is the other thing, if we put that car up on Bring a Trailer, to make the auction go well, you need two or three bidders, right, to bid it up, to get what the money that it should bring. And I think that car is so rare, and the buyer is such a definitive person that there might only be one or two people in the country who would be a contender. So I don't think there's a broad enough base of bidders for that car to end up where we want it to. So that car we're not going to put up on Bring a Trailer. And because here's the other thing. If your car doesn't do well, if somehow you muck it up, what happens is that car can get branded. And this can be, we've had this happen where a car will fall flat and other buyers after the auction, you'll be advertising the car and they'll offer you just a little bit more than what the high bid at Bring a Trailer was. So once, whatever the high bid is of your car, that can sometimes get set in stone. Well, that's what the car must be worth, right?
yeah,
So you put it up, it fails, and all of a sudden the whole world can now see it just by Googling your VIN
yeah.
number.
And, and
And
and I guess the other thing to be mindful of, this brings us on to another thing. If something happens on Bring a Trailer, whereby all the things we're talking about, there's something wrong in the detailing, the trolls move in, you end up getting, the car fails to, if you put a reserve in, for example, and it fails to meet the reserve, all these kind of things, that these are black marks
yeah,
that are kind of in the open, and you can't rectify them, even if it was an honest thing that happened.
yeah,
You end up with this black mark, and you can't reverse that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And you
and
can end up with, and the word honest is um, because you can be an honest individual coming into this. So we had a colleague, he put up a BMW lightweight that was a project car, needed full restoration, and it had a roll cage in it. And he removed the roll cage. And then partway through the auction, even though this car was rusty, needed a full restoration, was going to be pulled apart completely, but he'd removed the roll cage and hadn't disclosed it. And then photos turned up on a website of the car with a roll cage in it. And all of a sudden, they started questioning.
But in his photos, you could clearly see there was no roll cage.
Yeah, that's right.
So he wasn't trying to hide it. He just forgot to put it in the description.
Yeah, I don't know if he forgot. He just didn't think it was relevant. What it was he didn't think it was relevant because the car had to come apart, totally apart, and be fully restored, right? So we have a car coming up where we have to change the badging on the trunk lid of this BMW. We have a BMW 3.0 lightweight, which is a great car. It's a carbureted lightweight, which is incredibly rare. And it should have a CSL badge on the trunk lid, and it has a CS badge on the trunk lid, right? And so we got to determine, we could be on it. We could change it to the correct CSL badge, but what we have to do is we have to disclose that it had a CS badge, and we have since changed it. Changing it, you have to disclose everything you've done.
Because the thing is, with that guy, he ended up getting a lot less for the roll cage.
It turned into
a big black mark against the car, black mark against his name, even though there was no intent.
Yeah,
and these are the kind of landmines that we're
talking
about.
The challenge is it remains up there. Anybody can look at your account and go through your account and click on it and start reading the comments, and they might go, "Oh, that's painful."
Yeah. If you're selling another car in the future, they might say, "Well, hang on, he wasn't honest about this roll cage, so therefore we can't trust him on this car."
How much can we trust him? And we have to poke at him a bit to get the truth, because he doesn't. And so you could be a guy who is not mentioning something because you don't think it's important, right? Or you could be somebody who's just not educated to the same degree on what is important when it comes to your car, what's important to show, what's important to photograph. And really what it comes down to, you got to be proactive. You have to jump in and do a whole bunch of research on what has sold, reading all the comments, making sure that you're up to speed, right? You really need to know what you're doing, and you can educate. And then the other thing is, as we said with the Corvette, is you can hire an expert to come out, somebody who trades in these things on a regular basis. They can come out and start pointing things out to you. This is what people are going to want to know.
Yeah, because I think one of the things is being transparent, and I know that's a core value of your business.
Yeah.
And people have said to you over the years, they've been dealing with you for years, that you're really transparent in everything you do. And I think that this is a great illustration of that, because if you go out of your way to be transparent, that's actually the best thing you can do with Bring a Trailer. You get a detailer in to actually point out all those minor faults, and people like to see that. They actually. And I think that, so probably one of the big landmines is people either intentionally or unintentionally not going into all the details. I think that's probably one of the single biggest ones.
Yeah.
What would you suggest? I mean, because I know that there are people who, so they have more than one car. And I know you do a consignment process for your business.
Yeah.
And so you could, I guess sometimes you'll look at if they've got more than one car, you may decide that one of them goes to Bring a Trailer and one doesn't. Some of the reasons we've described in this video.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who's never used Bring a Trailer? That is the thing that they must do, the number one thing they must do.
They got to educate themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's common that we own a car for a decade or some extended period of time, and we kind of think we know. We kind of think we know what. But the marketplace needs to know certain things for you to maximize the value of your car. The market has certain questions that need to be answered. They're going to want to see certain things. Paint gauge readings for modern classics are very important because that will tell, a paint gauge reading will tell if a fender has been painted or the tail end of the car's been touched up. And then, of course, that will indicate that I wonder if that fender was dented. Was it in an accident? So on and so forth. So um, being attentive to the market, knowing what you need to do in advance when you're in the midst of it, and you get into a scramble where you're scrambling to get photos together and answer questions. But so forewarned is forearmed. And that's really what you need to do is you got to know what you're doing, look at what other people who've had successful auctions have been doing, and just mimic them. That's really the key thing. Really the key thing. And you
Right.
can't cut corners. You can't cut corners.
Yeah. And I guess if there are people listening to this who are seriously thinking of selling their car, you'd be happy to have a conversation with them if they want to discuss.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they might want to establish, is bring a trailer the best thing for me? Obviously, it is in a lot of cases because you use it,
Yep.
but there are other cases where it's not. And I guess, yeah, if they don't want to, there's a hell of a lot of mistakes that we haven't even mentioned, isn't there? We haven't got time in this video, but I think we've mentioned some of the really big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're happy to handle. We put vehicles up on Bring a Trailer on a regular basis. And we're happy if someone is thinking of selling and would like someone to handle all of this from soup to nuts. We're happy to do it. So we're at least happy to have that conversation and see if it's a vehicle that we think that we can present correctly and make sure we get them the top dollar.
That's fantastic, Dan. And I'm hopeful now that people who've listened to this video will have a much better idea of the common mistakes, most costly mistakes that people make on Bring a Trailer, what they can do to prepare their car and to prepare themselves in order they can maximize the price they get as well.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. It's great to catch up again, mate.
Yeah. Take care, Dan.
Thanks. See ya.